I'm here with Tom Deitrich, President and CEO of Itron, hanging out on the floor at DISTRIBUTECH 2025. Tom spoke in Tuesday's keynote about some of the things his company is working on. Among them, a new announcement this week, IntelliFLEX. Tom, can you tell everyone watching this video a little bit about it?
Well, one of the largest challenges that utilities face in the grid is the integration of distributed energy resources. It is the equivalent of somebody building their own exchange on a freeway and start driving the wrong way on the freeway. That's what happens when you start adding a lot of rooftop solar or batteries behind meters or even EVs providing energy back to the grid. There's a lot of different ways and forms this can take, but in general, it adds tremendous grid flexibility, complexity. So what we wanted to do with IntelliFLEX is find a way that we can utilize all those assets, reduce the complexity from the perspective of the utility, and make these things work better together. So IntelliFLEX is a modular and scalable platform that allows the utility to utilize those assets, understand where they are, plan their grid around using them, and find a way that we can begin to coordinate the usage of all these assets at the same time. And when we do that, we get an upside of maybe 10 or 20% extra efficiency out of the distribution grid, which is helpful in a growing demand environment.
It almost goes without saying, but it feels like that extra 10, 20 or more is so important right now as everyone scrambles to get every last electron into the system. How do you envision this really being a tool that makes utilities better at what they do in serving their customers?
Well, I certainly think that the higher quality of service and the lower cost that utilities can provide to consumers, that's the name of the game. And if you're really trying to optimize for cost, hey, why not use existing capacity? Get that extra 10 or 20% out of the existing assets that you have. If you want the consumer to trust you to be able to use those assets, you've got to build a closer relationship with the consumer. If you really want to understand a better quality of service, okay, here's another way that this tool can be used. But it really is a very comprehensive end-to-end tool, and it's dramatically increasing in terms of the amount of complexity we can take out of the operation of the network.
Itron has announced some pretty big partnerships over the last few weeks with NVIDIA and Microsoft. Would you like to share a little more about those announcements and the exciting things that you're working on?
Sure. Let me start to take a step back first and try to give you the motivation behind what we do. We certainly believe solving the problems of today's utility world is a team sport. So we want to have a very open system and interoperate with many other players in the industry. We want to have that vibrant ecosystem so we can bring the entire village to solve the problem. That's point one. Point two is when viewed from the perspective of the utility, one of the biggest challenges they have is absorbing all of the technology that just gets thrown at them from all sorts of players across the industry, Itron included. So to the extent that we, Itron, can work with other peers in the industry and pre-integrate our systems and make them work better together before we even show up on the utility's doorstep with a great idea, we think it's easier to accept, and therefore we can accelerate the entire ecosystem and provide that better quality of service. So when we work with companies like Microsoft and NVIDIA, the two of the recent announcements that we had made around this show, Microsoft has been a long-standing partner of ours for a long time. They have tremendous cloud-based technology, Azure, and they also have a lot of entrance into to the AI space. So why not put these things together? We are sitting on a lot of different types of data, analytics data, AMI data. Some of our other partners like Schneider Electric have ADMS data. To the extent that we can combine all three of those data sets in a way that's accessible, yet protected from the utility's point of view, and bring Microsoft AI to bear, that's really what's behind that partnership. So bringing these bits and pieces of data together in a unified sense to expose it in a way that the AI can operate on it in a confidential and private way for the benefit of the utility. On the NVIDIA side of things, it really was about bringing that AI ecosystem that NVIDIA clearly has tremendous IP around, and how can we bring that into the utility space? We very much believe that notion of the cloud to the edge and bringing inference across those spaces is the right way to solve the problem and really bring that technology to bear. For things like anomaly detection, if you can understand what's happening out at the edge of your grid, was that high frequency event I saw vegetation? Was it a safety issue? Was it just a capacitor bank switching? All these things will be happening. Some are normal, some are not. And if we can separate the wheat from the chaff using AI or machine learning based technology out at the edge, again, we can make the operation of the utility a lot more efficient.
The advent of AI seems like such an accelerant on the way the grid is not only being digitized, but is becoming distributed as well. From your seat at the table, Tom, where do you see AI leading us in the short and midterm here?
Yeah. I think AI will be incorporated into how all companies work in three ways. So one is, I'll use the Microsoft term, co-pilot. It is to make the employees, make us as humans more efficient. So to the extent that we can have the computer do some of the mundane work, so we save our time and energy for the higher functioning tasks, that's one good way to use it. Number two is to run a number of what-if scenarios. Think of it as a digital twin. What if, what if, what if? You can't what if in a real world environment, and you certainly don't want to do that on a live utility system. But to the extent you can understand what's happening and look at different possibilities, that's the second. And the third really comes to putting it into the operational span of what you're trying to do. And here you want to apply it in a much more deterministic way. When presented with the same inputs, you got to get the same outputs every time. But you still can bring machine learning types of technologies to bear to help out with things like preventive maintenance, to understand what's happening across your territory. So you could roll a truck before you have an outage. And we can use machine learning technology to be able to do that. Better forecasting, better prediction in a deterministic way. These are the ways that I see it being used today, but we've really only started to scratch the surface, and I'm excited for what the future may hold.
Speaking of excitement, last one, and I'll cut you loose. I'm sure you've got a lot to do out here at DTECH. But in the couple of days that you spent out here so far, what has the sentiment been like, the conversations you've had? Is there any core takeaway that you can offer from DTECH 2025 so far?
Well, I certainly think that energy in the industry has never been higher, but there's tremendous challenges, there's tremendous growth, but there's a lot of focus on the industry. You can't turn on television, listen to a news program without somebody talking about, hey, AI is growing and we don't have enough power to be able to supply it. Okay, slightly true, slightly false, but nonetheless, it brings a lot of attention and narrative to where we are as an industry. So you bring that energy, you bring that innovation, and it just brings a new level of technology awareness and accelerates the pace of change, which is the really exciting part about the industry for me.